With a bright idea, this former stockbroker is taking his crusade on climate change to the masses. And in a similar fashion, this man wants people to plan for their retirement and stay active for a cause. Taking charge of how you should live and living in a world that you can effect change, these are ideas that drive these two men to be today's change makers. Friday, 8:30 p.m. only on Channel News Asia. With a bright idea, this former stockbroker is taking his crusade on climate change to the masses. And in a similar fashion, this man wants people to plan for their retirement and stay active for a cause. Taking charge of how you should live and living in a world that you can effect change, these are ideas that drive these two men to be today's change makers. Tonight, 8:30 p.m. only on Channel News Asia. With a bright idea, this former stockbroker is taking his crusade on climate change to the masses. And in a similar fashion, this man wants people to plan for their retirement and stay active for a cause. Taking charge of how you should live and living in a world that you can effect change, these are ideas that drive these two men to be today's change makers. Friday, 8:30 p.m. only on Channel News Asia. Somewhere in some corner of the world, there's always someone who believes in taking small steps to change somebody's life for the better. They save one child at a time. They empower needy women one at a time. They give hope to the helpless, and they contribute to our economy one job at a time. They are the people who are quietly doing good. They are the social entrepreneurs of our time. In Melbourne, Australia, Nicholas Francis founded Easy Being Green in 2004. His area of concern is climate change because it is the single greatest threat the world would face in the coming decades. With a population of nearly 21 million people in Australia, an average household consumes a staggering 250,000 litres of water and is responsible for emitting 8 tons of carbon dioxide from energy usage. Nick aims to have 70% of Australian households reduce the usage of energy and water by 30% by the year 2015. This represents the creation of a projected US $22 billion industry in that time period.
I started Easy Being Green because we have an environmental problem, which is the biggest social problem we face on the planet, and I wanted to do something about that. I wanted to be in Australia, and we are some of the worst polluters on the planet, so I wanted to do something about that.
In 1984, Nicholas Francis gave up a successful career as a stockbroker. In 1998, he moved from the United Kingdom to Melbourne, his wife's hometown. The following year, he worked as Executive Director of the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence, one of Australia's leading welfare and social policy organisations.
Working at the Brotherhood was an extraordinary privilege. It's one of Australia's leading social welfare organisations, social policy organisations. But I went in as an innovator. I went in to say, I think something is changing in charity. And I was actually very committed to changing the structures that hold on to poverty. And I tried, and there were some people that really liked it and some people who really didn't like it. And I think I probably wasn't best suited to change management. I'm a much better founder and starter and innovator. And after 5 years of trying, getting exhausted, I thought it's time to move on.
And moved on he did, focusing on his one big passion, which is climate change.
Well, Easy Being Green is interesting because we give stuff to people. We give them stuff, and it saves them money, and it saves the environment.
The stuff that Nick is talking about is the Climate Change Starter Packs. Each pack includes 6 energy-efficient light globes and a low water use shower head. This pack alone will reduce a family's carbon emissions by 7 tons, and Nick supplies the pack free to consumers.
That house has got light globes in every single room, and they're burning energy. And in a traditional house, the light globes didn't look like this. They're round and they have a little element, and that element's burning electricity. If you replace it with one of these, you get exactly the same light, but it uses 20% of the energy. So we give these away free to people. They replace them in their home, and immediately they start saving money on their bills. But immediately we start saving electricity, which therefore reduces CO2 emissions. So that's the game that we're interested in.
Easy Being Green gets consumers to sign a nomination form to install the Climate Change Starter Pack. Once installed, the household immediately starts reducing greenhouse gas emission, in particular carbon dioxide. This reduction in carbon dioxide creates what is referred to as carbon credits. Easy Being Green calculates the carbon dioxide emission from energy consumption and works out its price per ton. It gets ownership of these carbon credits created from the installation of the starter pack. Easy Being Green then trades these carbon credits with the power or utility companies who utilize these carbon credits to offset their own gas emissions, hence avoiding penalties by the government.
So we go to them, well, how much is this problem going to cost you? And they go, well, to build a new power station, probably $20, $30 a ton of CO2. Or in some cases, like they did in Australia, in New South Wales, they said, each one of you guys, you've got to reduce your CO2. And if you don't, we're going to charge you $16 for every single ton that you don't reduce. And that was the key for us. That $16 a ton meant, we've saved 6 tons. What about if we sell you our 6 tons for each of our householders for, say, $12? It means it's $4 cheaper, you get your energy efficiency, you don't change your business as it is at the moment, and your customers are great because their bills are going down. You save money, the government gets its goal, you don't get fined. These guys over here get some savings in their house, and Easy Being Green in the middle make that happen. That's what we do.
For Ramasamy Natarajan, a Singaporean who had worked in strategic planning in the United States, reaching retirement had sparked his idea of pursuing a life of active aging. Today, in the lush greenery of his garden, Natarajan, or Nat, is enjoying his retirement.
You know you're going to retire. You know sometime in life you're going to voluntarily leave the job, or you'll be old enough that somebody who hires you will say that you are 60, 65 and you leave. So it shouldn't be a surprise to you. So therefore, the flip side of that is that you plan for it. When you're getting to be 60 and if you have to retire at 65, you just sit down and you say, God, I'm going to be out of this job. What do I do? Do I just curl up and die, or do I do something constructive?
In 1997, Nat returned to Singapore with his wife, a painter, and his children.
And Singapore is a first world city, and it gives you all the opportunities for arts and theatre and all the hobbies that you want to pursue, and the educational opportunities are plenty.
Nat has served on the board of the Retired and Senior Volunteer Programs Singapore, or RSVP Singapore, since year 2000. RSVP Singapore is a charity devoted to organizing recreational activities and voluntary services for members who are retirees. These include talks, computer courses, student outreach, and mentoring programs. Funds for RSVP activities were raised mainly from senior citizen walks and flag days. But the funds raised were not enough. Nat realized that the skills, professional knowledge, and competencies of its retirees were marketable commercially. It is also a potential alternative source of revenue. In 2004, Nat became founding chairman of RSVP ProGuide Private Limited, a social enterprise and the revenue-generating arm of RSVP Singapore. But the path to serving in organizations like RSVP ProGuide was planned long before Nat retired.
I knew I was going to go into a social cause, and I would also do some consultancy, and I would also do some work with the government or internet steering committees and things like that, in the economic restructuring program. So those things, so I told myself I'm going to get involved in public service in terms of either planning, public policy issues, or in terms of charity.
Today, RSVP ProGuide provides consultancy services to voluntary welfare organizations and small and medium enterprises. It also provides training services locally and overseas. But have these ventures brought in the revenue anticipated? We find out after the break. The start of any venture requires initial funding. Nick's social enterprise, Easy Being Green, was funded privately by US investors who had provided US $400,000, and this made up 80% of the total funding. The rest were raised from Nick's relatives and friends who were passionate about saving the environment.
They were investing because they believed me. They believed that actually this was potentially a global market and that potentially we could be a global business, and therefore there could be big returns in it. And they really liked the idea of doing it differently. So they could combine two things: who they wanted to be as people and the potential of getting good returns on their investment.
While the issue of climate change is not new, there remains as yet no major efforts to empower consumers to action. So Nick took it upon himself to drive this change and tackle the challenges head-on.
We thought at first it would be easy. You know, it's like everybody says they care about the environment, so we thought we'd start this business and we'd knock on people's doors and say, hi, it's not going to cost you much and we'll save you water and save you energy, and would you like us to come in? And we kept knocking on doors for 2 years and no one opened the door. Well, not many, half a dozen. But what we learned is, yes, people are passionate in their hearts, but when they make a decision, if it impacts on money, well, there's the school fees and there's the holiday and there's just, you know, there's the redecoration, or there's the presents, or there's always something else, because actually this doesn't impact on them immediately. So although people were saying it's important, they weren't acting. So we tried lots and lots of different ways of doing it.
In those initial days of misreading the market, Nick had to restructure the business to stay financially afloat.
We then merged with my now partner. So, you know, to stay alive and to make sense of all this, my bit of Easy Being Green was getting smaller and smaller, as was some of my original partner's bits getting smaller and smaller. But we did then come up with a solution, and the solution is when you combine the global, the government's needs for change. So they need this change, they need to do something about it, because what we ended up doing is having governments effectively pay for the work that we do in individuals' homes, and that suddenly started to make sense.
Then how, you know, who then did we get with the 52 states of America?
For Nat, it's people management that poses challenges. He has to manage their expectations as well as to engage them productively.
You're dealing with a bunch of people, and the people are the products, so to speak, in this case, and that has its issues when you start, because each person comes from a different background. One may be finance, one may be in marketing, one may be in general management, and each person comes from a different company, different cultures. So here I try to get them all to meld together again into one company.
To some extent, RSVP ProGuide has been successful in matching the skills of its retirees and marketing its services to clients.
When we have the retired members who join ProGuide, based on their skill sets, we have actually classified our consultancy and training group into 6 or 7 clusters, and these clusters are based on the various discipline of expertise that they come from.
Today, RSVP ProGuide collaborates with the Singapore's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in assigning English language teachers to the ASEAN region. Such overseas stints in countries like Laos and Vietnam have given the retirees a renewed sense of professionalism. Peg Su-hon is a retired school principal. She was in Vientiane, Laos, teaching English to senior civil servants.
When you retire, suddenly you feel a sense of loss. And that, now what is happening to me? Am I going to go into my autumn days and just looking at golden leaves, And suddenly it struck me, no, this is not what I want to do. And that's why I actually volunteered and become more active. And what is marvelous is that the people are really so appreciative. They're so polite, so gracious about it that it makes you learn to be humble.
Another retired school principal, Dilbar Singh, shared the same views.
It was a course on teaching oral skills to civil servants. And I ended up in Hanoi for 2 weeks. Actually, they were very surprised to see me. They expected a European or a person to come and teach English. They were really surprised, and they wanted to know more about me as a person wearing a turban and having a beard, and where do I come from. They were speculating whether I was an Indian or whether I was an Arab, So I had to give them a lesson on Sikhism, actually.
These RSVP ProGuide retired professionals are given token payments for rendering their skills and expertise. They know that the services they provide go towards raising funds in support of active aging. Retiring Nyam Tong Yuan was one of ProGuide's consultants engaged by BESCO, a manufacturing company, to review its work processes. He was all praise because his contribution is for a good cause.
I think the seniors like myself who are professionals in their normal working life, we should continue to serve, continue to contribute to the community and keep us active, especially the mind. I don't think that people should just simply switch off. It will not be good for their health, actually.
BESCO's general manager Nick Ng, who had engaged RSVP ProGuide consultants, had some initial concerns about their capability, but these were soon dispelled.
We are not sure whether they are still in touch with the latest technology or, but after we had a first meeting with them and we gone through all their credentials, we realized that they do have the necessary experience. During the course of the consultancy, we were able to avoid certain processes, which we think with other consultants is probably going to add additional paperwork. So with the experience, we are actually doing things that is really necessary and not doing it, like a safeguard thing,
Two social entrepreneurs with positive thinking and innovative solutions. What impact have they made? We find out after the break. Nicholas Francis, a champion of climate change and founder of Easy Being Green, the key to his success today lies simply in making sure that there is no additional cost for consumers to go green, and also that it is easy for them to go green.
I guess the big learning for me is if we were going to help people with their desire to do better, we were going to have to make it really, really easy. So the name Easy Being Green suddenly started to make real sense. It's like, it's not only has this got to be easy, but it's probably got to cost you no money, it's probably got to save you money, and you probably have to do nothing for us to be able to actually work with you. And it's that we went to 50% of the households in just a few months, and we changed their light globes. And that took out the need for a power station that would have had governments talking and lobby groups lobbying and, us building another power station that would have taken 10 years and nobody would have wanted to build it because it was going to be messy and all of that noise goes, and just 500,000 people quietly did a very simple thing 6 times in their house. It saved them $100 a year, and it saved the environment, or saves the environment, not save. It's the step, it's the first step.
Today, Easy Being Green is well staffed with a team of dedicated personnel led by its Chief Executive Officer, Paul Gilding, whose personal belief is very much aligned with Nick's vision and mission.
So I've spent around 30 years working on environmental issues around the world, both as an activist, so I worked with Greenpeace. So after 30 years working on these issues, I met Nick Francis, who had a very powerful idea, which is that we should actually take a very practical action with individuals to act on the environmental issue that for many decades I had been working to advocate people should do something. Nick's approach was, well, let's just go and do it. Let's just go and work with individuals to actually reduce their environmental impact.
I think there is something different for me, and that is that I'm willing to be messy. And the thing about, so it's not so much about risk or passion, it's about the willingness to get it wrong, to look stupid, to do the messy stuff, deal with real money, talk about profits, that dirty stuff. So I guess what I'm willing to do is a couple of things. One is I'm willing to talk about money, and I'm willing to make money, and I'm willing to play with money. I'm willing to make lots of money and have a huge business because I think it's needed. But I'm going to be driven by the purpose still.
Nick may be purpose-driven, but is still very much a family man.
I guess the challenge for me personally is how do I do that and be a dad? You know, I've got a 5 and 11-year-old that are gorgeous, and I don't want to miss them becoming 15 and 10.
Likewise, RSVP ProGuide makes no compromises for the services it delivers to its clients.
So this is the big difference from my expectation and today. But then we talked about, then I think I mentioned about we've made $95,000. And on business alone, we expect to make maybe $150,000 in the gross income in the second year. So we are moving along. I want to see RSVP ProGuide as a major consultancy training company in Singapore, and probably a very successful social enterprise.
Two men, one consumed by the fervent belief that the future of our planet is in our hands now, and the other who gives meaning to active retiring, are transforming lives in their own innovative ways.
I think it's no longer that simple, because you live much longer.
Easy Being Green is a business committed to driving the market on getting people to act. You know, you must act, your job.
If you thought that you retired at 60 and you will die by 65, you can blow up your wealth. If you're going to live to be 90, you cannot spend to live. You have to plan to live.
Actually, the big social issue on the planet is climate change. It's not a niche, it's you and I and everyone watching this, and everyone who, isn't watching this should do something about it.
It's Easy Being Green! Bye!
Be part of their vision. Log on to these official websites for more information.